Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live video. It's always scary when I push the live button. I feel like I'll never get used to it, and I think that's okay. It's just something that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. But I really am enjoying going live because it allows me to not prepare as much because I'm preparing in the real world. I'm preparing actually doing business. I'm not really preparing like these crazy videos that I have to edit. I'm showing you what I'm actually doing in my real world, which is making money doing the business that I actually love doing. So believe it or not, I'm addicted to this. And so it's not difficult for me to press that live button. But for some reason, every single time I do it, it's like going down a roller coaster. I know I love the roller coaster. It's super fun. Like I love going to Six Flags and going on Batman. But every time I go down the roller coaster, something is just like that first time, it just kind of scares you. I'm also trying to grow a mustache right now. And so if you guys see a little patchy on my lips, that's why. Some people are telling me I should shave it. Some are saying I should keep it. But I'm trying, right? Because I'm trying new things. So today I have a lot of work to do. And so I figured I would come on YouTube live and make it an educational thing for everybody because I think that A, I can share this with my team and they can kind of take a look at it to see exactly what I want out of these campaigns. And then B, it could be a really good opportunity for you to actually look and see behind the scenes my process step by step on how I'm actually going to get this business results because somebody that's going to spend $30,000 with me a month, that's pretty scary, right? Imagine you were spending $30,000 a month. You'd be scared. So the more I can alleviate this for them, the better. So I'm going to show you the exact process that I'm going to do with that. I've also got these like blue light glasses on. These are my girlfriend's, and I'm going to look at the screen for quite some time. So I just want to make sure that my eyes don't dilate and that I can actually go to sleep at night because a lot of performance has to do with sleep. So I've prepared a presentation. I'm going to have to do this presentation multiple times because it's not one business. It's multiple businesses. And so I'm going to do a similar process for each of them, but you're going to see how different the data is for most of them. Because every location is different. Every zip code is different. Every sentiment is different. Every market is different. Everybody values different things around the world. So I'm going to show you how we utilize data to come up with a clear plan. So without further ado, let's actually get started with it. So this is the presentation that I've set up, and I'm going to be looking to gather a couple of things from this. The first thing is a clear outcome. I'm going to want to define what a clear outcome is for each of the locations. The brand that I'm going to be working with, I'm going to want to make sure that each of the outcomes are specified to that brand. I'm going to want to figure out their digital presence that they currently have. That's going to be really important to start out. And I'm going to show you exactly how to run that report directly inside of SplashDash, which is the analytics tool we're using for the video. Then I'm going to figure out the marketplace, what I need to compete with, the amount of reviews I need to get so that I can benchmark the business for those reviews. Just as a comment, by the way, telling a customer they need to get more reviews is not useful at all. Please don't say that ever again in your life. If you can avoid that, please do so. There's nothing valuable of you as a digital consultant sitting there with your thumb in your mouth and saying, you need to get more reviews. That's not helpful to anybody. They know that. Everybody knows that. You should always be getting more reviews. You should always be drinking more water. You should always be breathing and taking deep breaths. You should be exercising. But just because you say that doesn't help anybody. What I found really helps is benchmarking a goal and doing a significant achievement when you reach that goal. So I'm going to show you how to benchmark that goal based on marketplace averages and then how to create a culture within that company to actually celebrate that goal. So I just want to make that super clear. Then the next one is we're going to have to create specific ad budgets for each of the locations based on data. And these are budgets that they're going to have to confirm and that they're going to have to be comfortable with. Then I'm going to want to figure out what people love about that business, what the marketplace loves about similar businesses. In this case, they're dentists. So what people in each of those areas value over dentists. Then I'm going to be redoing each of the websites. So we're going to have to find out the top page data from each of the websites. I'm not going to carry over all of the pages from all of the websites. And that's so key for you to understand because if I'm doing 6 websites right now, which first of all, these are all at the same time. So it's not like an easy task. It's just a lot of work. I'm not going to want to spend a ton of time on things that aren't going to get me results. So I'm going to focus on the 20% that's that's delivering 80% of the results. I'm going to eliminate a lot of stuff here. I'm going to subtract. I'm not going to add. I'm going to curate. I'm going to remove. Removing is a lot more difficult than adding. It's so easy to go, let me just add 1,000 random pages to this website with no strategy at all. So I'm not going to do that. And when I show you this process, I'm going to probably make you rethink how intimate digital marketing actually is. It's not just putting up a website in a client's domain, brushing off your hands, and then going to chill. It is very intimate. And so I want to make sure that the communication that I give you inside of this video is understanding the intimate process of doing this for a business. And it sounds weird, like it's all lovey-dovey. It sounds weird when I say that, But in reality, you're tampering with somebody's business. You're tampering with somebody's life. Like they rely on this to go about their life, to feed their kids, to put them through college, to make sure that they have a living. And as a result, you have a living because of it too. So I'm going to show you how to really tap into sentiment when you create your pages. And there's just no way you can make a big website following this process because every page has intent. So let's keep going. Then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to figure out what the top search queries are. This is one of the tools that I'm going to use as Search Console for this. I'm not going to use SplashDash. I'm going to use Google Search Console, which is by far the best way to find free SEO data from your website. Then I'm going to create like a proposed sitemap. This is what's going to be our designers are going to create for each of the businesses. And it's really going to start off with probably 5 different pages, really highly intent optimized 5 pages, and then we can build from there. Then for each of the different businesses, I want to walk away with some key takeaways, which is really going to be the different types of things that our team is going to need to know to execute this plan. Because I'm not going to be executing the entire plan. I'm more so going to be proposing it and then making sure that we get some execution there. Then there's a little end slide. So I'm going to present this to the client. But what I want you to know is that money is made in the project management. Money is made in the planning. Money is made in the deliverable, in the accountability. Marketing now is all about accountability. It's actually nothing about your technical skill set. In fact, you could probably have no technical skill set and still do really well in marketing if you understand accountability. There's a lot of people in the world that don't even know how to pick up a computer, but still make a ton of money in the real world because they understand the basic management principles. This is really hard for me to wrap my head around when I started my business because I was flying blind, assuming that everybody knew what I wanted all the time. So I thought that people were mind readers, that they could telepathically read what I wanted from them. And that drove me crazy. It actually made me really depressed because for me, I was like, how do they not know what I want? Don't they understand me? And then I realized how selfish human beings actually are. They don't care about you. However, you can use that to your advantage. And I'm not trying to be cynical, but that's just the way management is. If you don't tell them often what you need and what you want, they have their own stuff going on with their life, and you can't blame them for that. So in real estate, where you make your money is when you buy. And I don't own any real estate, but I've heard that a lot from a lot of people that do real estate. In digital marketing, the money is made in the project management. The money is made in the clarity. The money is made in the communication. So if you're not great at communicating, that's a skill set. That's a productive skill set that you should really get good at. So hopefully I do a good job communicating with you the plan here today. So let's get started on the first business. The first business is going to be Modern Day Smiles of St. Pete. Now, I do want to let you guys know that this is an active client that we've been working with for about 4 years now. So I'm not new to this business. As you can see, when I actually look up their business, I actually have all their Google ads already running and things like that. But really what we're going to be doing is focusing on a more engaged plan to generate more results for all of their locations. And this one is specifically for dentists in St. Petersburg, Florida. So the good news is that this website's already up and running. They're already getting leads, but it really needs to be redesigned and it really needs to be restructured so that they can take the business to the next level. Now, of course, there is incentives to do that for my agency because there is an agreement that we have. And of course, that is going to be financially lucrative for the company in the long term. Now, if I look at the business right away, I can find the name, address, and phone number, and I'm going to really rely on these things to create the plan that I'm looking for. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to SplashDash. And I'm going to just go to the main page. And the first report I'm going to run is going to be a digital presence report. And what this is going to allow me to do is it's just going to allow me to see what's going on with their business. Specifically, how they're currently ranking, what their domain authority is, all of those basic things that I'm going to need to actually create a general strategy for them. So when I go to run this report, it's going to talk to a bunch of the different integrations that are currently available inside of SplashDash to give me a high-level overview of what's going on with the business. Now, one thing that I've really found out about SplashDash recently, which I'm really happy with, is you can actually take this data and put it inside of ChatGPT. Now, granted, it's not going to give you like extreme information, but it'll give you the key details. So as I'm planning out for all of these different businesses, you might see me jumping in the ChatGPT and pasting the SplashDash public link that'll just transfer the data into GPT so I can create some of these comprehensive messages or outcome emails or whatever I need. So let's get to it. So now that I've opened up the digital presence, you can see I can look at the report at a visual basis, but really what I'm looking to do is just take this public link at the bottom, which is going to allow me to share it with the client if they wanted to view it on their phone. But I'm really just going to take that information and just put it into GPT. And I'm simply just going to write extract the key details from this URL. Okay. What that's going to allow me to do is as I continue to build these plans, it's going to allow me to take a lot of this key data from the SplashDash report specifically, and it's going to allow me to prompt engineer so that when I have a finalized plan, it's going to know all of the context. Some of the key data that I'm just looking at, just by looking at this, is they've got a great reputation, right? They've got some good organic keywords, good organic traffic. So that's definitely not something I'm going to want to lose with this brand. Good traffic value, which basically means that's how much money they would be paying in Google Ads if they had based on their organic traffic. Great domain authority. I can tell you right now, we're going to do well there. Low spam score, GoDaddy domain. That's nothing new to me, but if I was working with this client for the first time, that might be something that I want to consider. Just keep in mind, we recommend GoDaddy for pretty much everything. Just want to make a comment about that. Stop being cheap. Please stop being cheap. Just use GoDaddy. Use the big names. Use the big brands. They're big brands for a reason. Personally, I actually like the idea of monopolies because I know that the product and the domain is safe in there. I can't even tell you how many clients I've worked with that have their domain in some random registrar. We can't get access to it. Then they lose their domain. And so if you go 25 years in business relying on a single domain name and all of a sudden it's lost because you're using some cheapo registrar, I don't recommend that. I recommend sticking to the brands that are going to make sure that you have some safety and security. That doesn't mean you can't try new things. Like the amount of risk for you to try SplashDash is very little. You're not relying on us to host your domain. GoDaddy, the risk is very high. Cryptocurrency, the risk is very high. Your bank, the risk is very high. Your computer, your hard drive, your insurance, your risk is very high. Don't go with cheapo brands. I've seen people lose their domains because of that way. And your domain is the home front of the internet for you. So just something about there. Then it'll show me the date, expiration, etc., where they're currently have a content management system. And remember, I'm going to do this for all of the locations. So I'm just going to cover this once with you guys to kind of see the data that I can pull directly in ChatGPT from SplashDash. The hours, the services offered, etc. And you can see here that the sources that it pulled from was the actual SplashDash URL. So that's the first report I'm going to run. I'm not even going to look at this report right now. I'm literally just going to run a different one. So let's go ahead and run the second report, which is going to be the customer sentiment. And this report is, I really want to get a better understanding of how people feel about this brand. So I'm going to take its name, I'm going to take its location, and then I'm going to put in the domain here. And then what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow SplashDash to read all of the reviews that the business has across the web. And then it's going to put it into these little sentiment blocks so I can get a better understanding of what people think about it. So right off the bat, you can see a ton of keywords. You can see the neutrals. You can see the negatives. Again, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to take this information so that I can continue to prompt engineer my strategy, and I'm going to tell it to do the same thing with that report. So there you go. It's going to give me all the key takeaways. And by the way, this is it's a relatively new thing that ChatGPT can do. And it's kind of weird. We tripped over this with SplashDash. We were just like, oh, you can now put URLs inside of ChatGPT. GPT-5 can read a URL and instantly fetch its data, which was awesome because now I don't even read my visual reports most of the times. I just put the data in, prompt engineer, and get the result that I want. It's really useful. If you were pre-ChatGPT 5, which was only a couple months ago, this wasn't possible. And so now it's really useful directly inside of ChatGPT to see some of this data. So you can see some of the differences here versus digital presence, which is going to give me some stats. And then sentiment is really going to tell me things like desk, things like hygienist, things like clear communication, etc. And that's all going to hyper focus on when we actually create a landing page. We're going to focus on some of these key themes here. Showing the dentist first, talking about the staff, showing how clean the office is, how we're recommended, the care we provide, the hygienist. And we're even going to use those exact words because those exact words are how people want to be mentioned when they come across our webpage. So with that being said, let's go back to SplashDash and I'm going to run the third report. And this time it's going to be a sentiment analysis. This one's going to be a little bit different than running the customer sentiment because this one's going to allow me to feel or understand how people feel about different businesses in that area. So the businesses that I want to look for are the businesses that my client is specific for. In this case, it's dentists in this location. So as I run this report, SplashDash is going to search all of the Google Maps listings. It's going to review all of the different reviews that are being mentioned for dentists in that area. And then it's going to return a different result. The difference between this one and the customer sentiment is that the customer sentiment is specific to that business. That's obviously important because if you want to understand that business specifically, you could do it that way. Sentiment analysis, looking at the market, is also important because if you want to understand how people genuinely feel about varieties of people in your niche, that's a good way to approach that too. Now, if the client comes to me and they say, hey, Ruan, how should we market? How should we message? How should we promote ourselves? What should we say? This allows me to really understand what the data is saying, and it allows me to do a lot less and get the same or even better result, as I've been talking about in my past live streams about how you really should be doing the things that are getting you the results. So sentiment analysis is something that I never really skimp out on because it allows me to understand in this case, 40 dentists in that area and 24,000 reviews it analyzed, what the most frequent words that were being said were. So as you can see, it would be a sin, a cardinal sin, if I did not put the doctors as the first things people see directly on that page, and to use their actual doctor name and their extensions of whatever that might be. So I'm going to take that data, very similar to what I did with the other one, and I'm going to go to GPT, and I'm just going to paste that link, because now that there's context, it probably knows what I want. And then GPT hopefully can access that URL. And there we go. So very similar to what you were seeing before with digital presence. I've analyzed all of these reviews. It showed me what's most popular. Then it gave me some breakdown of that information. And so now I can go ahead and continue to prompt my strategy so I can give a real concrete strategy towards the end. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be the ad budget simulator. And this one is going to allow me to basically calculate an estimated budget for an ad campaign depending on the local demographics and the spend data. Now, I've been talking a lot about ads in my past videos because personally it works. If it didn't work, then companies like Fiji would actually not be very far, but they are far because of advertising. And so a lot of the times people ask, how much money should I spend on ads? That is a common question that any digital marketing professional will get. And the right answer to that is how much are you willing to pay for a customer? And so for this client specifically, I'm going to guesstimate that the average lifetime value of the average customer is around $1,800. So the typical customer that comes in for 5 or 7 years and they get cleanings, let's say that's the minimal one. For a moving company, it could be once every 12 years they get a returning customer. So the LTV would be calculated that way. So when we run the ad budget simulator, what we're looking to do is we're looking to create an anchor of a number they could start with. We're not looking to create a perfect solution because that doesn't exist. Right now, as I'm working inside of this tool and in ChatGPT, I'm working inside of a laboratory that is very sterile. Once the strategy leaves the laboratory, it's going to get beat up. And I've got to be able to respond to the way it gets beat up on my feet. And so keep in mind, this is just a benchmark and an anchor, but you really should be thinking about how much is that business willing to pay for a customer, and then building a strategy around that. So let's go into the actual strategy here. What I'm going to need to know is a couple of things. The first one is, oh, that's so funny. I actually ran out of credits. So the first thing that I'm going to put in here is the business name, the keyword, the conversion rate, the close rate, the average revenue per customer, the cost per mile, and the locations. And so the reason for that is because if I'm going to be advertising, I'm going to want to be understanding exactly how much the customer is going to make, which is really, really critical. The second one is the cost per 1,000 impressions. When we advertise, we're generally reaching a bucket of 1,000 people at a time. That's called a CPM. If you advertise in a billboard, that's going to be a lot higher than if you advertise on Facebook. If you advertise on YouTube, it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you advertise at the Super Bowl. So CPM is one of those things where we allow you at this time to manually enter depending on your plan. However, this is funny too. I'm just going to issue myself some more credits here. So I'm going to put 100. If in the near future, I wanted to actually change that and create different reports for different things, I can do that. But let's go ahead and just put in the client's information here. So I'm going to put that. The keyword I'm going to put is dentist. I'm going to keep it really broad so I can get the best results. The conversion rate, I'll put 5%. The close rate, I'll put 30%. The average lifetime value I told you was 1,700. The actual CPM is 38. And then I'm going to put St. Pete, Florida. Now, guys, I want to be super clear with you when I'm doing this information. I want to explain some of this data for you really quickly. The way that you can calculate what you can actually expect to get out of a return on investment is the close rate and the conversion rate. The pages that Developmart creates for our clients, they're typically 2 to 5% conversion rate, meaning if 100 people come to the page, 5% of them will actually turn into a lead. So that'll be 5 leads that the business will get. And then from those 5 people, the business may close 3 of them or 2 of them or 1.5 of them or whatever that is. That's the close ratio. Now, of course, you have little control over the close ratio in an aspect. You do have a lot of control, though, through digital. If you're explaining and communicating clearly on the client's website, their close rate will go high because if somebody contacts them, they're already pre-sold because they're what they read on the internet. So the close rate should be pretty high. But as marketing professionals, one of the biggest challenges is we can bring a bunch of people to your door. And then from that point, it's up to the business to actually close that customer. That's why selection is key. You want to work with businesses that have their systems dialed, or you want to work with businesses that you personally believe in. A lot of the businesses that I work with are companies that I actually believe in, and they're small. They're small, mighty businesses, David versus Goliath situation. I'm not focused on corporations. I'm not focused on large accounts. I'm not focused on cool, trendy brands. I'm focused on the people that you need when COVID-19 happened. And a lot of the times I get scrutiny over why we choose the industries that we choose. Well, in reality, these are people that we rely on every single day. You rely on your doctor, you rely on your plumber, you rely on your HVAC tech, you rely on your electrician, you rely on your painter, you rely on these people that make up a large population of the entire world. So you can increase their conversion rate by having good digital marketing. But generally speaking, if you don't know what to put into these kind of projections, you can put 2 to 5% for the conversion rate, and then you can put 33% for the close rate. I've found most businesses, if you give them 10 customers, 10 leads, they'll close a third of them. The rest are out of your control, and you should be documenting why those leads did not close if you're working intimately with that business. It might be a competitor was cheaper. It might be you don't have something that they want. It might be they didn't like your face. They didn't like your ethnicity. They didn't like your religion. You'll never know until you try to understand their story a little bit more. In future videos, I'm going to talk a lot about understanding attribution at a deep level. This doesn't mean looking at a tag that says this call came from Google. That's not attribution. That's just technology. Understanding attribution is understanding customer stories. So I'll stop blabbering on there about that, but you get the gist. I'm going to put the name, I'm going to put the keyword, I'm going to put the conversion rate, I'm going to put the close rate, and then I'm going to get some stats here. So I just re-upped my credits because I ran out of credits. How ironic. So as that loads, you're then going to get a report that looks like this. And this is going to allow me to create a clear advertising budget for the customer that I can start with. So I'm going to put the conversion rate at 2%. I'm going to put the close rate at 33%. So just understanding this math a little bit. Customer's going to make $1,700 if they close somebody. We're going to pay $38 in Google to reach 1,000 people. They're going to get 2% from the website we make as a conversion ratio, and then 33% close ratio. Scrolling down, I get to make some adjustments here in my targeting. You really want to think about this a little bit with your customers. Luckily, everybody has to go to the dentist. We all have teeth. But generally speaking, I would want to go ahead and just filter out some of the ages. These ages are way too young. I don't think that those people are going to be our target customers. But really, anything above 25 to 75 are going to be our target customers. Gender, I want to just keep the same. Race, I don't want to change that. Income level, I may want to change too. So I really want to make sure that people that are making above $50,000 are going to be displayed our ads. So what this is going to allow you to do, as you can see, is it's going to allow you to actually break down all the different targeted options, which is going to affect your ad budget. So as you can see, when I took a look at that filtering, the starting ad budget that I'm going to start with is $3,122.08 in Google Ads and search ads, just for the term dentist or terms related to it. Now, this is a benchmark. When I start running ads, as you'll see, because I might do more videos about this exact project in the near future, you're going to want to make sure that you back up your hypothesis. As soon as that client starts getting results, you're going to want to frequently communicate that with the customer on an ongoing basis. So that metric right there, if it seems low or if it seems too high, you can continue filtering the demographics down if you needed to for that category. Now, in a lot of cases, you may want to run multiple budgets, right? You may want to run one specifically for seniors or one specifically for some other service category. You may want to do those things and combine them all. But in this case, I'm just going to keep it general. This is how much we should be spending per location at this area, because there's 2 locations that I'm going to talk about. So I hope that makes sense. So now that I have that, I can pretty much guesstimate how many customers we're going to get from that search ad, which is going to be 11 customers per month. That's a healthy amount of new customers per month for this type of business. And then I can pretty much see how much we're going to make on return on investment just based off of that. Now, again, as we're benchmarking this stuff, that doesn't mean that that business isn't going to close more services with those general customers. The $1,700 that I'm estimating here is like lowest situation possible from lifetime value. So if they sell them additional services, or if people come in and they want additional things, those numbers will change. But I found that the more conservative you are with this kind of stuff, the better it typically works, because if you're promising and under delivering, people are going to hold you to what you promise. So you generally don't want to do that. So as I continue with this information, it's going to give me some clear data about the demographics, right? And so most markets we're seeing, we're going to want to be extremely diverse with our messaging and our marketing. As you can see, there's a lot of African Americans, there's a lot of Hispanics, there's a lot of Asians, and there's predominantly white. But if I turn on just their main area, you can see that data changes a little bit. So I may want to understand that. When we make the website, we'll make sure that we include a lot of this information as possible in there. And then similar to what I did before, I'm going to take that public link. I'm going to go over to ChatGPT in that same prompt, in that same message. I'm going to paste that data directly inside of there. And then ChatGPT is going to give me the contextual insights that I'm going to need to actually do that. It's going to give me the key inputs. It's going to give me the forecast recommendations, etc. And then it said that it could not actually take that data. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that data inside of here just so it has some context. And then from there, we can continue moving forward. So now, recapping this, I have the digital presence of the business, the metrics of their specific business, the sentiment of what people value from other people, and now an ad spend that I can start with to make sure that we continue to optimize this. So now that I have that information, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do top pages. So top pages is going to allow me to simply analyze what pages on their website are currently getting traffic from the search engines. And that's going to allow me to make sure that I preserve a lot of the pages that are actually getting traffic. If there's pages that are getting traffic that just don't even make a lot of sense, those probably won't make it to the final website because those pages aren't really making any conversions happening to the website. Now, as you can see here, a lot of these pages are actually a pretty healthy amount of traffic. For example, if I look at the right side, monthly percentage is pretty split between a lot of the pages. So for this build, I'm actually going to keep a lot of the URLs exactly the same as you can see here when I move over that website. You want to avoid changing URLs as much as possible, especially if that URL is getting traffic. If I see any of these columns with 0%, I'll just kick that out of the actual website build entirely. In analytics, though, that might be showing different information because you might be running ads to those internal pages. Where in top pages and SplashDash, because it doesn't have access to your website, it's just showing you data of Ahrefs' top pages data, which is using crawlers to see which pages are getting the most traffic based on keyword ranking data. So if a page is ranking well for keywords and you want to retain those pages, I highly encourage you to keep the URL structure the same because when we publish this new version of the website, nobody's going to have to get redirected to it. And so instead, what's going to happen is they're going to click that same link that was there. The search engines aren't going to have to change anything. And when you go to actually revamp the website, users aren't going to get confused because they're on a different page. Also consider that 301 redirects or redirects from a different page to another page actually slow the user down. And so if you're going for site speed, which is a critical metric in pretty much all of the things that we do, you want to make sure that you're not doing as many of those 301 redirects unless there's no traffic on the page because nobody's going to find that page anyway. So you might as well just redirect it. So I hope that makes sense. So taking that data, I'm going to use that and actually go here and paste that data directly inside of my GPT prompt, as I was showing you a little bit before. And then hopefully GPT picks up that data. And now inside of the AI, I can actually see what the top pages data looks like. Okay, it looks like it couldn't access that page. Let me try that again. Sometimes with ChatGPT, you might have to try it again. If it can't, I'll just copy and paste that data directly inside of here just so we have some context. And so as I'm doing that, I'm going to start running my next report, and then I can start actually building out the plan for the customer. So let's go ahead and see if it'll actually pick it up. Looks like it's thinking. Okay, I couldn't pick it up. So I'm going to use this. That data there. Now, if you'll notice, a lot of the pages on the URL, 97 of them, 46 of them are actually not getting any traffic, which is 47.4% of the total tracked URLs. That's really important to note because if we're presenting to the customer that we're going to redo their website and we're going to reduce the amount of pages that are actually going to the website, we may want to consider that information when we're presenting it. And so, as you can see, as I start to go through a lot of these different pages, a lot of them don't get much traffic at all. So I'm not going to want to move over a lot of these pages. And a lot of them are these service pages that we create traditionally, but now we're taking a kind of a different approach there. So now that we have a lot of our data directly inside of ChatGPT, as you can see, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to simply provide me with a summary. And that summary is going to give me a lot of this information to allow me to create a proposed sitemap and a proposed plan. So I'm going to prompt it. And then from there, I'm going to see what return I get. So from here, now that I have all of the data that I've pulled from SplashDash in one conversation, I'm going to say, give me an executive summary. Okay, so that data is all in there. And as you can see, my prompt was pretty straightforward. I'm just looking to recall the data that we saw, key themes I should mention on the website, ad budget monthly, quarterly, yearly, so I can present that to the customer, photos to include on the website and understanding the demographic, and then pages to prioritize based on the traffic. I think that those 4 things will probably give me the entire strategy. So I've gone from guessing, basically, just saying, here's what I feel, and Mr. Customer, here's how you feel. Let's try this, to really looking at this from an analytic and scientific approach. So let's see what ChatGPT returns, and then I can analyze that data and check for its validity, and then I'll show you guys what I'm going to do next. So ChatGPT is going to take that info. It's going to think and give me a really long answer. While that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and see what I can find inside of, okay, never mind. It already came back. So for this campaign, I'm going to lead with trust and comfort. Obviously, we have a lot of reviews, which is really great. I want to talk about how our care is gentle, clarity, no pressure, right? A lot of the key themes here are focused on implants, which makes sense. Problem-solving FAQs, local relevance, of course, speed and follow-up, really critical. The budget, I'm going to spend $3,000 per month for this location, $9,000 per quarter, $37,000 per year, and I'm going to target this many people with that expected CPM. Then the photos to include, I'm going to show a healthy mix of male and female. I'm going to mix these 3 generations, not too many silent age, many boomers, Gen X, and millennials. I may want to not go younger or older than that. And then visible racial diversity is going to be really critical. So I'm not just going to put white people or just black people on the website or just Asian people. I'm going to use a healthy amount. Then I'm going to create a clear list of what I'm going to need from the photographer based on the sentiment analysis that was pulled in. And the pages to prioritize are going to be the ones that give me a lot of traffic currently. Definitely the homepage is going to be the first thing I focus on. And then from there, I'm going to redirect 46 of those 0 traffic pages. Could be scary a lot of times to redirect these pages because you may have done a lot of work on them. But for example, if we're seeing out of 97 pages, 46 of them are getting no traffic, save yourself the heartbreak, save yourself the energy, and focus on the things that are going to drive the results. In fact, I'm sure a lot of those blogs that were showing up on top pages are probably national traffic, which is never going to make that business generate more in actual revenue anyways. Those are probably patients that will never find them locally anyways. So blogging like that, unless you have a deeper strategy behind it, is a complete waste of your time. Instead, we're going to focus on the things that AI can't automate. AI can't automate the ads. AI can't automate the photography. AI can't automate the visual representation of the brand. We're going to put our energy on those 3 things. Anything that AI could automate, we're going to avoid because there's a sea of people doing the exact same thing. So I really hope that makes sense. So now that I've gotten this data, I'm going to keep it at the bottom. I'm going to save that. But now I'm going to start to fill in my presentation. So I'm going to go back to SplashDash and I'm going to go to reports and I'm going to look at all the previous reports that I've run, specifically the business overview. And I'm just going to use this tool that I really like. It's called Go Full Page. It's a really wonderful tool because it allows you to basically take an entire page like this. And then I like creating these little presentations in Canva. In fact, people really enjoy them, I've heard. So it's something that I always do for customers because they like looking at it visually. And I'll just take that information and I'll start actually building out my presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload these photos directly into Canva. And then as you can see, I already had kind of a skeleton of the presentation that I'm going to create for my team to actually run this stuff. So inside of here, you can see that I'm going to put the image once it uploads. Let me try to upload it again. Ignore the pictures of the food inside of our Canva. We work with a lot of different industries. So once that image uploads, I'm going to do that for each and every single one of these different steps. I'm going to drop that there. And now I kind of have this nice little presentation that I'm going to create for the long term. What's cool about Canva 2 and SplashDash is if I take the public URL, just like that, I'm going to go back into Canva and I'm just going to link that URL because with Canva, you can actually share a presentation that's hosted on an online link. And what that allows you to do is when the user sees it and they click, it'll actually bring them to the report that you're talking about, which is really useful, especially because I might be presenting this data in the near future, which is really important. So I don't want to like look around for links as I'm creating the report. One other cool thing too about this tool, the Go Full Page that I really like is if I go ahead and do something like this and I kind of just like break it down, you can highlight things. So for example, if I wanted to highlight how their reputation is actually pretty good and I wanted to make that a key talking point, before I actually download that, that's exactly what I would do. So by the time I upload it inside of Canva, I referenced myself what I was talking about when I downloaded that information, because you're not going to remember everything, right? You want to make your sales, you want to make your life, you want to make the way you pitch convenient for yourself. You don't want to sound like an idiot. And the way you're going to sound like an idiot is if you don't understand what you were talking about in the context of things. So same thing here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put that inside of there. And as you can see, that's there. And then I'm going to follow the same process for that report, taking this customer sentiment, going back into Canva, and then clicking on that right link, clicking on the actual link, putting that there. So when I share that public link, it'll be all set. Now, there's one report that I didn't run that I completely forgot, which is the marketplace overview. So I'm going to run that in just a second here, but that's going to allow me to see what benchmarks I need to do for the customer. Because if the customer is going to pay us all of this money and really try to grow their business, one thing we've got to hold them responsible to is generating those reviews. Like I said before, though, it's not helpful to tell somebody to make sure to breathe every day. Like, that's not really helpful. We all know that. It's a good reminder, sure. But generally speaking, you want to make sure that you lead with things that make sense. And the best way I've found is telling the customer, giving them a goal of what to beat. Once they have a goal to beat, they understand and they can communicate with their team the average amount of reviews that they're going to want to beat. So this was the market sentiment analysis, as I said before. So I'm going to put that there. And following the same process, gathering that share link. So when I'm presenting to the customer, they can actually go ahead and see what I was talking about and click that link. That looks good. So the marketplace overview, this is what I'm going to run right now. This is what I forgot to run. So inside of SplashDash, I'm just going to search that. And then I'm going to go here. And similar thing that I saw before, which is the category. I'm going to type in the location. And this is going to allow me to quickly create a report of the different businesses that are in that area and what actual review counts I need to beat and what averages I need to beat. Luckily, we live in a capitalist world, so people have options when they go to buy something. And so because of that, we've got to make sure that we're best presented in that case scenario. So as that's running, I'm going to continue with the actual SplashDash reports, putting them inside of Canva. So going back here, then I'm going to take the actual ad budget forecast, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the link that I actually shared with ChatGPT, because that's the link with all of the relevant information on it, which was this one. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go full page this one. Same thing here, except this time I'm just going to capture the budgeting. Most customers are just going to care about the money. They're not really going to care about a lot of the strategy. I mean, they'll act like they care about it, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the money that you're spending. If they trust you, the strategy is just kind of out of their hands. If they don't trust you, they're going to try to micromanage the strategy as much as possible, as they should. Because you've got to realize when you're doing this stuff, you're no different than a snake oil salesman. You're literally somebody trying to get them to spend money on something you have no confidence in. If you do have confidence, you're one of the rare digital marketing professionals that are out there. So the more you can lower their barrier of fear, the more that you can increase your confidence, the higher success you're going to have in the ads campaign and just in general in digital marketing forever. So I really want to make that clear that by the end of this presentation, when I review this with the client, and I wish they would let me do this live with them, but when I review this information, you're going to see that the confidence that they have, I'm going to see is going to be much higher because I'm addressing a lot of their concerns. So I want to get ahead of the game is what I'm trying to say when I actually do that stuff. So again, for this one, I'm not going to do the entire report because that would just be a waste. I'm actually just going to gather the sections of the ad budget that's going to allow me to clearly communicate on that slide what we recommend spending. Now, I might bring up a lot of these different things in conversation, but one of the ones I just want to mainly show before I click through to the report is the highlight of, hey, here's your ad budget, and that's what you should be spending on digital marketing per month. And that's really, really important because I can then use GPT to simulate a lot of the things that I just showed you, like how many customers they can get on a yearly basis, quarterly basis, etc. That's why I love simulating a lot of the data from SplashDash directly inside of GPT, because it allows me to play with the data in a conversational text and a conversational format. So once I paste that inside of there, you can see now I have the ad budget there, the simulator, and that's going to allow me to obviously communicate the budget with them as well. So while this was loading, we loaded the actual marketplace overview report, and you can see that in their area, they're actually, this is them here, they're actually well above the average review count in their area. So in this market, the average review count is 624. Here, their average review count is, or their review count, I should say, is 4.8. In the market, their average review count is 4.8. Their average review count is 4.9. But you can see that isn't necessarily correlating to the rankings, because on the map listings, they're ranked number 8, even though they have higher review counts than even the ones that are ranked number 1. So there's so much more that goes into the map rankings than just the review count itself. But it doesn't really matter where they're ranking. It really matters how many customers they're getting. Because again, this is just one query. There's millions of ways people search. So it's difficult to predict how people search. Now, you can try to use keyword research to try to get ahead of it, and you can try to look in Google Search Console to see how people are searching, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's traditionally how we do SEO, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how they're going to look for you. So what this is telling me is it's giving me a lot of confidence for this specific business. When I do this exercise for all of the other businesses, this might be different. This might be not the case. They might be well under reviews, which is going to lower my confidence as a digital marketing professional by looking at their competition. We cannot ignore the competition. It's a brutal thing to ignore the competition because users have a choice. So as I go into this conversation, I'm going to have a lot of confidence about this location, and I'm basically going to predict that they're going to get results. If this wasn't the case, I would go in a little bit more skeptical, and I would say, you may not get results. Here's why. We should improve this before we start advertising. Guys, the reality is not everybody is ready to start advertising. If you're ready to start advertising, typically speaking, you have professional photos, you have professional videos, you have a higher amount of reviews than the market average, you have a clear value proposition, and you understand that value proposition, and you may have a good offer that people are interested in that local area. If a customer comes to us and they want to advertise, we tell them no if they don't have those things. But that doesn't mean we can't work together to get those specific things. So scheduling a photo shoot, getting a video about the brand, etc. Oftentimes when clients come to us and they're not getting results, it's very clear to see why. Nobody wants to go to a website with no clear value proposition, stock photos. People are going to be doing business with you. And in this case, you're going to be doing surgery in their mouth. That's nerve-wracking. So what we choose and what we curate for the website is going to be really important, guys. I just want to make that very clear. So when I show you how we're going to wireframe some of these pages, you're going to see that the way I'm doing it is very delicately focused on what people care about in that area. Because if we want to resonate, we don't want to do a bunch of noise. We don't want to be loud. Too many brands, too many people, too many agencies, too many local businesses think that they need to be louder than people. They need to give signal to people. Getting one view versus a million views is okay if that one view that you're getting is sending a signal. Noise is very different. Everybody's making noise. Everybody's doing that. And it's very difficult to have signal when it's all noise. So we're going to focus on signal here. So as we kind of go through this, now that I have a good understanding of what that benchmark is, I'm going to take that data, paste it into ChatGPT so that we can understand what the marketplace average is. And that's going to really allow me to make sure that we can rank or give them more reviews. Because now the natural goal for this business, the benchmark, becomes the highest review count. So we want to increase reviews by about double. Now, that's a big feat for a business. That should be really celebrated if we can get to that, to the first market further reviews. Might take a year or two, but you're planning on being in business for longer than a year or two, correct? Is this your income stream for longer than a year or two? Okay, yeah, Ruan, it is. This is my income stream. Okay, so do you see yourself being in business in the next 2 years? We might as well be the top rated person in that area. Okay, cool. How do we do that? Well, the first thing that we do is we make it a part of our culture. So when I have a conversation with the customer, I'm going to talk about how they're above average in reviews, and that's great. And they're going to get results because of that. That's awesome. And in fact, you're in the best position of your lifetime to advertise right now because of the metrics that we're seeing. If that weren't the case, I would tell you you're in the worst position of your lifetime right now. Why? Because I don't need to sell you something. I would genuinely want to make sure you do you get good results and I get paid. If we don't do this, if we don't move forward, I don't own many things. I don't have a lavish house. I don't have kids. I don't have all this debt. I don't have all these insane expenses. So if I don't get business, it's not the end of the world for me. You don't want to work with a business owner that's desperate for money because they have all of these attachments, correct? And so whether you succeed or not, I'm in your best interest. However, if we're going to do this together, we're going to make sure that you get above average, stay above average, and then potentially get to the highest. And if you get to the highest, let's work on X, Y, and Z goal. That's a little bit of the conversation that I would have with the business owner. I would get that deep with them, that their results, their winning their success, I'm not relying on that. However, I do want to see it. Those are two very different things, guys. Attachment is critical in digital marketing. The more attachment you have, the more likely you're going to be desperate for business, and people can sense that from a mile away. So let's continue on. As I get that information, I'm going to go ahead and put that into the actual ChatGPT. So now I can understand what the average is. And like I did before, I'm going to use Go Full Page. I'm going to crop that information out so that I can make my presentation even stronger. I'm going to skip a lot of the data that's publicly visible here. We don't need a lot of that information anyways. And then I'm going to take really just the top, and I'm going to reiterate to them that they actually are doing pretty well in that area. But we want to make sure that we highlight two things. One is the average review count. And the good news is that they're actually above the average review count. Let me actually just fix this so they can see their own result like that. So there they are, and that's good news. You're actually above the average review count. That's amazing. And then we're going to want to beat the highest review count. The only metric here that's very difficult for us to beat is the highest star rating at 5.0, because for you to get 5.0 is very rare. And in fact, you can see the business that does have 5.0 on this list is only 514 reviews. So the higher you get, the more difficult it's going to become. So I don't want to make that a key part of us having success. Many people say that it's weird if a business has a 5.0 rating and they think that it's spam. Don't believe that. That's all wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a 5-star rating. In fact, the best businesses in the world that are local typically have a 5-star rating. It just means they do an amazing job. Don't try to down them for that. Don't try to act like that's a weird thing. That's just awful to tell a business that that's not right. You want to strive for 5 stars if you can, like a 5-star hotel, right? That's why they literally call it 5-star hotel. So in my presentation, I went ahead and put the marketplace overview directly inside of here. And now you can see I'm starting to build a cohesive talking point in conversation with my customer without having to design anything. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm creating talking points in presentations, because clients don't want to see presentations with a bunch of text and a bunch of data. They want to see research, and they want to see critical information. So let's gather the top pages data that I looked at before. And to reiterate, with the top pages, that is going to be something that I'm going to can a lot of the data from, because a lot of the pages actually don't get traffic. And that is actually what I'm going to highlight in this case scenario. I'm going to highlight the pages that don't get a lot of traffic, and I'm going to make sure that the customer knows when we redo the website, well, look, we found 97 pages, but 46 of them don't get any traffic. So a big part of our strategy is going to be killing the pages that aren't getting any traffic and focusing on the pages that are getting a ton of traffic. So that's going to be really, really critical as well. As I'm pulling this information together too, guys, I just want to let you know that I'm actively thinking about what the website's actually going to look like. Luckily, in this case scenario, we have some really high quality photos and some really high quality videos that the brand has already done. And so when we get to the design process, when we get to the wireframing and the sitemap process, it's all going to be focused on this data that we're already talking about. So just by doing this exercise, you're already creating a strategy that you can communicate with the customer. But not only that, you're already communicating with your project management or yourself, if you're doing this yourself, exactly what you're going to need to do from a digital marketing perspective. So let's go ahead and get the top pages data directly inside of here. As you can see, now that that's there. All right, looks good. Gather that URL for top pages, paste that directly inside of here. And now we have almost a concrete strategy. So we have outcome, brand, digital presence, what people like about the business, what people like about the market, how they stand versus their competition. I'm going to put budget last, what top pages they have, ad budget that we're recommending on a monthly basis. For the ad budget too, it would be good to put inside of here what they can expect to get as a return on investment based on that. And SplashDash's report actually does allow you to see that. So you can just copy and paste that directly inside of there. And then let's look at top search queries. So for top search queries, I'm going to go to Google Search Console, because a lot of the times SplashDash or other tools like Ahrefs or other tools like SEMrush or other tools like, I don't know, some of the other ones that are out there are great if you don't have access to the client's website. In this case, SplashDash is useful because it's pulling in some information that's very difficult for me to get with other tools. But then I'm also using and kind of hybriding different tools, like, for example, Google Search Console, which is allowing me to track how people are finding the website through search queries. So I may want to understand what our top queries are and make sure that when we redevelop the website, we're focusing those top queries, because that's how people are currently searching that information. So in my title tags, my meta descriptions, and my ads, along with my sentiment, I may want to blend those terms along with the website to make sure that we get a good result. So let's go ahead and look at that information together. So if I go to the Google Search Console, you can see that the domain that I'm looking at is the actual domain of the client, Modern Day Smiles. As I go through here, you can see that the traffic is pretty much stayed straightforward for clicks, but that's okay. Most of our traffic comes from ads anyways. And then you can see that from here, I can see all the top queries that are currently being run to this page. So if I were to go ahead and do last 12 months to get a bigger picture of what queries are driving the most traffic to this website, I can. Last 12 months, you can see that most of the queries that are driving traffic to the website are actually their name. Now, I know this might sound like a big surprise to everybody. Most businesses, it's going to be their name. Why? Because the brand is the most powerful thing the business has. The brand is accumulation of every decision they've ever made. The brand is all of the logos they've shown. The brand is all of the impressions they've had on people's mind. Everything the business does, from their website to answering a phone call to how they interact with the customer to what the owner's doing, that's all a part of the brand. And so we really are not shocked when a business has the name of their business as the top keyword coming to their website. In fact, it's one of the most healthy things that a business can do. The problem I find is that people like myself, digital marketing professionals, typically don't use that to their advantage. I'll give you some examples. Not putting the brand's name and logo on the ad, making sure that the brand's name and logo isn't all over the website. We're really devaluing how powerful the name is of that business. So when we do the advertising process, as I'm going to walk you through, you're going to see that a lot of the things that we do is actually really focused on making sure that people see the brand name, because clearly it's the most popular thing going on for this business right now. It's not a keyword, believe it or not. Someone searching for your name is a lot more powerful than someone searching for a keyword. Someone searching for a keyword is looking for 3 to 5 different businesses that you're going to compete with. Someone searching for your name is somebody looking for you. That person's looking for you specifically. It's very powerful. So in advertising, in digital, in strategy, and everything that I do, I try to get people to search for that business's name more. And the cool thing about Google Search Console is you can track that because it tells you how many people are finding you because of your brand name. Same thing with Google Ads. If you run a Google ad with that person's name, which we do with every campaign, you can quickly see on average over time how many people are searching for that business's name. So super critical, just something that I wanted to cover really quick and something that we see in the data often, as you can see here. Now, as I go through this information for the queries that I'm looking at, I'm going to want to get a clear understanding of what to optimize the website for based on clicks and also impressions. So as you can see, a lot of the impressions are coming from different keyword phrases. The reason why a brand's impression wouldn't be high is because there's not that many people searching for it. So somebody searching for dentist near me is going to have a lot higher impressions because that has nothing to do with you than somebody searching for your actual name. Two very big differences. And that's why when we filter the data, you're not actually seeing it inside of the impressions, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and go full page this. I'm going to edit it, as you can see here. And then I'm going to crop it. We don't need to see all this information on the left side. And then I can go here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take all of the big keywords that we're currently showing up for, just the top. I could spend days in here, and SEOs likely will. But really what I'm going to do is I'm really just going to get a clear understanding of what impressions are giving us the most, like what data, where are we showing up the most, and then optimizing the website the most for those different types of things. So inside of Canva, I'm going to put that inside of the impressions page, but I'm also going to link to the report as well, so that when I'm actually having a conversation with the client, I can open up this full conversation or this full context here to clearly show what we're seeing. So as you can see there, I put that there, and then I'm going to go ahead and link Google Search Console directly to that. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, link, so that when I actually pull this up, I can quickly see what I was talking about at that time. So now that I have that information, going back into Google Search Console, looking at our own data, I'm also going to want to see the pages. So if you scroll up to the top, you can see the pages. Now, generally speaking, if you're going to filter and you're going to want to move a lot of the pages that are getting a lot of traffic, you can quickly see that the pages that are getting the most clicks, in this case, are some of the blogs that are on the website. Also, a location itself. If I change this URL, that's going to make it difficult for Search Console to see that change, and people might not make it to that page, which is going to lower the amount of clicks that are going through to that page. So this is going to be a priority for us here. Now, as I start going through some of the paginations, as you can see, you can filter by 500 there inside of Search Console. You'll see that as you get kind of low, there's going to be a lot of pages that don't actually get a lot of clicks throughout the website itself. In fact, if you go through to the last 24 hours, or last 7 days, which will give you a bigger picture, this will actually show you right off of the bat how many pages you're actually getting that are active. So once we get to that 0 point, once we get to that cutoff of 0, a page might be getting a lot of impressions, but it could be getting 0 clicks. So that's not really something that I'm going to want to move over when it comes to the actual website. Now, this is the detriment of SEO reporting in a nutshell. If you're reporting on a lot of impressions, but 0 clicks, what's the point? Now, a lot of people are going to argue that in AI visibility world, which we are in right now, it's important that we're getting visibility and not clicks. And I agree, that is critical. But it's not really critical for things that no one's ever going to search, or something that is showing up, but it's for somebody searching in a different country or a different national area or a different city. You really want to focus on the things that are going to make you the most money. Because when we redevelop this website and the impressions tank, but the client's leads increase, and we can easily track that information through the form of a customer relationship management software like a CRM or their booking software, that's what we're going based off of. If you're working corporate with these big brands, that might be a little bit different. They're going to judge you based on impressions and sales and all these kinds of things. Local, they're really looking for leads. So that's why with our SEO reporting, we're very careful with the way we report things. Generally speaking, what we report is how much money you made and how many leads you got. Everything outside of that can be scrutinized for deeper dives, but it's generally something that we don't really go into when we work with the customer, because although you're getting less impressions, you're getting way more leads. So we're really looking for quality over quantity here. We're really looking for signal, not noise, when we talk to the customer, when we work with the customer. So don't be afraid to cut off pages that are giving you a lot of impressions, just because when you send a marketing report, the impressions are going to be down. That may seem like an alarm bell to the customer because they don't fully understand, but just let them know that you're reiterating the strategy based on their goal. And in this case, it's to get more customers. It's not to gain more impressions of irrelevant things that are never going to bring you business in the first place. So don't be scared to eliminate pages that are getting clicks and getting impressions, but aren't serving you any value. It's one of the things that I find the most critical in our process, because a lot of the times when we tell customers, we actually have no strategy for this. We have no strategy for blogs. We have no strategy for SEO pages. We have no strategy for geo pages. A lot of the times their traditional thinking brings them back to, this is what the company told me 4 years ago I need to focus on. Well, today we need to focus on the most important thing that you mentioned to me, which is more customers. And the way we're going to do that is X, Y, and Z. And in fact, no one's even going to those pages. You're getting impressions, which is great. And if someone searches GPT, okay, cool. You're going to show up there as a response. That person's never going to do business with you. Which one can you take to the bank? The lead or the impression? In this case, it's the lead if you're working local. Guys, remember, if you're working corporate, ignore everything I'm saying, because for them, it is a lot about the impression. For local, you're looking at the lead level. So really, really keep that in mind. So with that being said, I'm going to take the pages that are getting the most clicks. And as you can see, they're these ones, which are the ones that are exactly expected. I'm going to go ahead and do another full page scan, which is going to scan that entire page and give me all of the data that I need so that I can present it to the customer and, more importantly, to my team. And then once that scan is done, I'm going to go ahead and just filter out which ones we're not going to move over and which ones we're going to lose. Now, if you want to get real technical, you could actually see how much impressions you're going to lose based off of this and tell the customer. A lot of the times when I do this kind of stuff, I'm actually telling the customer, look, you're going to lose a little to gain a lot. And ultimately, they will respect that kind of thing. So just let them know what they're potentially going to lose. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to filter out anything that doesn't have any traffic. And I'm really not even going to consider those pages when I move this over. Anything that does have traffic, I may consider moving those over. It's not final. I still want to do an analysis of which ones are actually local, which ones have actually gotten conversions coming through the page. And we track that through analytics, or we track that through our site content management system. Which ones are getting results, which ones are critical for them to send to their customers, right? There may be a lot of these pages that are internalized. And so it's not important that they're getting leads, but it's important in a business sense, or it serves a different purpose, like a careers page or like your first day at the company or whatever's being hosted on the website. I do want to make this very clear, though, that for local businesses, the intent of the website is to sell. A lot of the time, somebody will come to you and they'll want to add all of these different things to their website. And I just like tell them to back up, take a deep breath, and remind them that this is salesmanship. This is not a place for you to look cool. This is not a place for you to communicate with somebody who's not going to see anything. This is a place for you to attract new customers and to really be a reference for people that are considering you. The website is a mechanism for sales. It's not a mechanism for education, really. You may want to educate them on the service, but you don't want to bloat it with information that no one's ever going to care about. You can do that on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and things along those lines. The website is almost like the proposal in a sales process. I'm going to give you information online, like with this video right now. And then by the time you get to the website, you're just looking to confirm what you've heard in the world and trying to buy there, right? So it's really the conversion mechanism. I love reminding people of that because we often get excited and we hear things from different YouTubers and channels and things like that. But really, it's a mechanism for sales. So that's the way I explain that to the customer there. So when I look at this data, I'm really just going to highlight a couple of the key website pages that we may want to consider. For example, this first one, they may send to potential clients. Anything below 10 visitors, I'm going to really, or I'm sorry, let me actually go down. Anything below 1 visitor, I may actually consider canning. So I'm going to download that information. I'm going to upload that inside of my slideshow presentation. And now I feel pretty confident that I can propose a actual website sitemap to the customer based on all of the pages that are currently getting traffic on their website page. So with that being said, let's go back into ChatGPT, and I have all of the data inside of here that I've collected from all of the different places before. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start visualizing what some of these pages are actually going to look like. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to prompt what I want the page to read and what I want the page to say and what I want the page to show. So I'm going to prompt some very basic information, right? Things like that. Then I want to have ChatGPT write a wireframe instruction for the following sections using the sentiment that we heard. I want a hero section with 2 call to actions. I want a video background. I want a reviews feature highlight on that actual section. Then I want an about section. On that about section, I want people to clearly see the doctors with their names and titles and maybe specialties. I want buttons going to those doctors so people can clearly see that information there. Then I want an office section. This office section is going to include the services offered in order of importance, which this conversation should know just based off of all of the data and sentiment that we did above. Then from there, I want to highlight gentle, hygienists, and I want to highlight acceptance of insurance. Okay. Then from there, I want to talk about the specialties, specifically the key services that I saw were the top ones. Then I want to highlight a section about Medicare, acceptance of it, how it works, FAQs. Then if I go back to the sentiment in SplashDash, I can look and see what I might be missing from a marketplace level. Doctor, office, comfortable, hygienist, cleanings, the office, work, desk, questions, insurance. We kind of covered a lot of this stuff, right? So I'm gonna add another section here that's going to be a clear FAQ section, which is going to include questions and answers based on insurance, office, services, general info, Medicare. Then I'm going to talk about a call to action, which is going to be book an appointment. I'm going to want a map of their location, and I'm going to want a footer section. So now that I have that there, based on that, this is going to be exactly what SplashDash in this case, which is where I got the data to feed into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is going to give me. So it's going to write out this information, as you can see. Now, a lot of the information is going to be generalized. So I'm going to be able to have our designers and our content team actually put that information in directly. But you can see that as this is creating, I can go over to a tool called v0.app. And there's a lot of tools like this. You can use Lovable. You can use v0. You can use Build With. There's a ton of tools that do this. I'm sorry, not Build With. Bolt.new. That's a popular one. But really what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this text. Okay. I'm going to put it inside of v0. And while that's loading, it's going to give me context of what to put on that page. Now, as that's loading, I got to remind you, back in the day, and I say back in the day as a 31-year-old person, this was very difficult to do. Like, I had to sketch these things out, explain it to a designer, etc. Nowadays, you can just literally bang this out in a couple minutes like this, like I'm doing in an hour. So in an hour's time frame, boom, I have my strategy and a visualization of what that's going to look like. Now, we're not done, right? There's still so much more to do. However, when this page comes to life, I'm going to show you how we're going to plan around this with my actual team. And that's going to give you extreme clarity of how to do this the right way, work a lot less, make a lot more, and make your client way happier, and have the data behind it. So when that page comes to life, I got to remind you that we're then going to put it inside of Figma. We're then going to build it in the actual content management system. We use Duda, and then we're actually going to show it to the client, execute it, etc. But we're going to have to follow this process for each of their core services. Now, if you've been paying attention, this is a lot of work. This is not something that you just kind of guess. And so if their key services are the insurance, the dental implants, whatever their key services are, I'm going to want to run sentiment analysis for each of those areas and also create these pages and these ads based off of that. So, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So by the end of this video, you walk away with extreme clarity of how you're going to get this business results or a client that you're potentially working with. So as that's running, you can see inside of V0, it's actually building it. But while that's doing that, I'm actually going to run another sentiment analysis for one of their most important pages, which is going to be dental implants. So if I put in dental implants here and I put in their actual location, SplashDash is going to tell me what's important for a patient looking this information up in that local area. And you're going to see that it's going to be very different from what came up from dentist. Now, as you can see, there are a couple of different new words that are introduced. To help us visualize this, I'm going to look at the sentiment of the actual dentist phrase versus the sentiment of the actual implants page. Not much has changed, right? If you look at the dentist, you see there's a couple of keywords that are mentioned that are very similar. The first and foremost is still the doctor. So as I look at this one, this is for the implants, still the doctor. But you can see that things have changed a little bit. One of the main things that I see is felt in the implants. Feeling is really important here because they're actually going through surgery. You can see that surgery also is one of the most important things. Feel is one of the most important things. So as I communicate that section of the services, I'm going to talk more about the feeling, the emotional feeling of walking away and being able to get X, Y, and Z result. Now, on my channel, I've talked a lot about something called loss aversion, which is which one do you feel more confident with? You're never going to be able to chew food ever again, or you're going to be able to chew food again. Generally speaking, the average human being is more afraid of loss than they are happy with gain. So we don't want to expose that in our marketing. However, we do want to remind people of the cost of no action. In essence, we want to remind them of the risk of waiting for this stuff, not by scaring them, but just letting them know at a scientific level. So this is going to ultimately affect how they feel about the service. And it's no surprise that that's showing up in the sentiment analysis for the surgery. The dentist could mean anything. That could mean a cleaning. That could mean just whitening, whatever. There's no surgery involved in there. But you can see that now you're getting the sentiment of a different part of the business. It's going to tell you way different things. So as I prompt that data inside of ChatGPT and as I create a different wireframe, I'm going to want to make sure I focus on the sentiment of that actual data. And a hint, just a quick hint, as you go into advertising, that's going to be the same thing as well. You're going to want to create ads based on the sentiment that you're seeing for that local area. So let's go ahead and look and see what we got here. So from there, I can get that information. That's going to guide how we create our next page. But now that the page is done, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this is the general wireframe that we're going to use. We're going to put sentiment-specific keywords there, as you can see. All right, we know the market values that because we ran sentiment analysis. If I were to go back to this, I can see that people feel and they want to feel comfortable and they really want to make sure that the office is clean. So we're going to really focus on that with our marketing. Going back here, then we're going to highlight the amount of reviews. We know we're above average in this case. We're going to give people two options. We know one of them is booking the appointment. And I love that V0 actually knew to actually call out the book the appointment a different color. And we're going to bring people right to the meet the doctors. We know that's one of the most important things. And then we're going to talk about some of the two major critical things at the bottom. Scrolling down, I'm going to have a clear section where the people can meet the team. There's going to be the doctors. We're going to utilize the doctor's name entirely. Just the key thing, guys, if you're in marketing, make sure that you utilize someone's middle initial. I find that people don't create enough space in their name. They try to make them really short and sweet. But there's so many Ruan Marinos in the world. There's very little, or if not one, Ruan M Marino in the world. So I like to utilize people's credibilities as much as possible. We tend to minimize these things. We tend to minimize how long someone went to school. We tend to minimize how hard it's been to get here. You've got to realize that you are the product of our ancestry who survived insane amounts of pressure. And you have the name that they decided to use during that time, or as you were created, I should say. So in this case, I like to use the full abbreviations as possible. And as we saw in sentiment analysis, that is clearly the main thing that people care in that market is the doctor. So we really want to make sure that we incorporate that as much as possible. And the beautiful thing about this too, that I just want to reiterate is as I use SplashDash more and more and more, as I do more digital marketing, which I'm addicted to, I see that the data is always so different. So there's always something new and cool to talk about when you start doing this level of research for a customer. So really exciting stuff. So as you can see, boom, we have all the doctors here. This may be a carousel so we can show. Then we want to show that our offices and our services, this will be a little highlight, linkable things to that, little highlights of each of different types of reviews. And I love that it did that. Now, if you're using SplashDash, you can actually just go to the bottom of the actual customer sentiment one that I ran before, which was about that business specifically. And you can just gather reviews from different things that were mentioned. So if we wanted to highlight different parts that mentioned the experience was good or that the patient felt comfortable, you can see all of the different ways that they're being mentioned comfortable inside of here. And so that would allow me to quickly pick in here different headlines. So I love what V0 did here is it picked a part of the sentiment, aka patients love gentle treatment in this area. Then they picked insurance. Then they picked flexible financing. So I really love that they incorporated that information there. Then I want to link out to all the different types of specialties. In this case, it's exactly how I had it written out. Then I added a section for Medicare. Then I added a section for frequently asked questions. It even broke it out into different things. And you can see it wrote the content for us. Then I put a little call to action towards the bottom. And you can see it put the name, address, and phone number, etc. there. If I switch this over to mobile, you're going to see that it's going to look pretty good on the mobile version. So when I actually design this out and when I give this to a designer that's working on our team, you're going to see that it's going to become extremely easy and comprehensive for them to execute this information. Now, we use Basecamp, right? And so if I were to go to that customer's actual file, you're going to see that they have a lot of actual photos that are already being used. So those photos there, I'm going to use on that wireframe, and that's really going to allow me to make something that's lucrative long-term. So you can see that I have the homepage pretty much ready to go. Every time we do this process and we explain to the customer the data behind the process, they have no feedback. And in fact, this is called revisionless design. And it's where when you show something in front of a customer, they may change a word or two, but they're not changing the fundamental look of that page. And if you want to increase your profit margins, if you want to get more results, you can't be working in feedback hell all day. That's not the right way to live, guys. I used to live in that world where everything was urgent. All of the project management was all over the place. But when you provide this level of clarity for the actions and the intentions that you're doing, you're going to see that you're going to make more money. Because remember, the money is made in the project management. It is not made in the monthly recurring revenue you make by charging somebody to do this for them or in what your employer pays you to do this. Your money is made in where you can manage the project and communicate it effectively to save yourself time in the future. So I would take this process and I would do this with all of the different categories that we're going to work with for that business. I would run the sentiment report and do it with the implants, run it and do it with the cosmetic, run it and do it with all the key pages. So as I go through this process, I now know a couple of things. One, what to focus on, what to say, how the page is going to look. Two, what to put on that page, the images I need, the videos I need. And three, how much to spend on advertising for that specific section. As I start to build out this plan for the customer, which I'm going to do, then I can give a concrete, clear picture of how I'm going to execute this, and communicating it with my team makes it extra clear. So the next steps here would be, I would take this presentation that I've created, I would share it with my team, and then I would delegate out what needs to get done as I do some of the work as well. So there's a ton of work to do here. So if I helped you guys at all with this video, I hope I provided you with some clarity. I'm going to put in the comment section, I'm sorry, the description sections, maybe this presentation, so that you could take a look at it in the near future. If you want to try SplashDash, or if you're paying for it and you already see some different ways that you can use it, I encourage you to try it more. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.